Hello everyone, R. Jerome Harris here from eprophetic.com, and today I want to talk about let's cover the topic in brief. Do we know God's name? Now, I'm speaking strictly from the periphery of the realm of Christianity. I'm not going to speak about the Islamic God, the Hindu God, or the God of the other religions. This is strictly from the periphery of the air quote Christian God. Now, many of you have heard others. You may have seen videos, read articles, sat in pulpits in kingdom halls, and heard individuals say that God's name is Jesus, that his name is Yahweh, that is Jehovah, it's Jah, or some other name. Now, is this accurate? Now, what reliable information that we have on this topic? Now, if you are a person who claims that you believe in the air quote Christian God, then let's focus on the book that Christians use, the Bible. And so let's talk about this. Let's go back to the Garden of Eden, the man Adam. Do we read anywhere in the garden, in Adam's exchange with his creator, where Adam used a personal name for God? No, it's not there. Now let's fast forward somewhat and let's look at the man Noah. Did Noah ever use a personal name for God? The answer is no. Let's fast forward some more. Let's consider the prophet Moses. Recall that scene where Moses was in the presence of God before the burning bush, and God had tasked Moses with going into Egypt and to go before Pharaoh, and also to go before his people, the enslaved Israelites, and to impress upon Pharaoh to let his people go, and to let the enslaved ones, the Israelites, that they have a God who knows their suffering and their pain. Moses said something very interesting. Moses asked God a question. Moses said, well, Lord, I'll go before the people, I'll go before Pharaoh, and they're going to ask me, well, who sent you? Or who sent me? And what is his name? Did God give Moses his name? The answer is no. What God said to Moses was, you tell them that I am who I am. Now, that expression, I am who I am, is very, very important. So I'm going to come back to that in a few moments. Now, let's go into what is known as the New Testament, or Greek scriptures, because from Matthew to Revelations, that's all written in Greek. The Old Testament, or what many may know as the Hebrew scriptures, is written in Hebrew and Aramaic. But in the Greek scriptures, or the New Testament, let's consider the Son of God, the one that the Most High God sent into the world of mankind. Did Jesus ever use a personal name for God? The answer is no. Now, myself being a former Jehovah's Witness, and again, I would like to repeat this in all my videos, I don't have an issue. I don't hate Jehovah's Witnesses. That would be improper for me to hate or dislike anyone. I don't view individual Jehovah's Witnesses who sit in the kingdom halls below the organization. I don't fault them. Why would I want to do something like that? They're simply obedient children. They're obedient to the organization that feeds them. I was obedient until I sort of woke up. And my awakening was something I asked for long before I became a Jehovah's Witness. Way back then in the early 90s, actually beginning in the mid 80s, where I was not a baptized Jehovah's Witness, but I associated with the organization, unbaptized, because I was in the military. And when you're in the armed forces, you can't become a baptized Jehovah's Witness. There's nothing preventing one from going to the meetings and learning. So that's what I did until I got out of the military. Then I almost immediately got myself baptized because I knew the teachings even before I became baptized. But I digress. So if you read within the New World's translation of the Bible, in the Greek scriptures, again, that's from Matthew to Revelation, you'll find that the name Jehovah is inserted in that Bible. If you look at other Bible translations, the name is not there. What you will find are the words God, all capital letters, and the word Lord, all capital letters. You'll also find that in the Hebrew scriptures, or the Old Testament from Genesis to Malachi, where God's name appeared, supposedly appeared. What appears there in the translation are the words God, all capital letters, and the word Lord, all capital letters. Now, going back to Jesus, Jesus never used a personal name for God. It's just not there. In fact, his disciples never used a personal name for God either. One has to know when there is error. Now, some may say, well, why are you doing this? Are you trying to cause trouble, or are you trying to agitate people? No. The truth is very important, and I can only look at the example set by my master. If he never addressed his God, his creator, by a personal name, why should I? Why should any of us? And apparently, he did not teach a personal name to his disciples, and especially to the ones that he chose, the 12, the chosen ones, or the apostles, because they never speak of a personal name for God. In fact, what I do believe Jesus did, he sort of told us what we should do, or how we should handle God's name. If you go to Matthew chapter 6, verse 9, one will read there where Jesus taught us how to pray. Again, that's at Matthew chapter 6, verse 9. And there he says, "Our Father in heaven, holy be your name." And some Bible translations, holy be thy name. Now, why would he do that? Why would Jesus say, let your name be sanctified, or holy be your name? Because God's name is so holy and we are imperfect. Now think about that. We have the perfect name of God, and God is perfect in every way. We are imperfect. So in other words, we are not worthy to know God's perfect and holy name. Not yet. And so what Jesus was teaching us there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 9, was that we maintain God's name as unknowable, as unpronounceable, because it has not been given yet. And like I mentioned earlier, when Moses asked God, who do I tell them who sent me? And Moses, and God says, what is your name? And God didn't give Moses a name, because Moses himself, an imperfect man, God himself perfect. So it's like mixing oil with water. That's like mixing the holy with the unholy. So that is why we do not know God's name. Now, there are those within the camp of the Watchtower, and I know this, having been a Jehovah's Witness for many years, until I disassociated myself from the organization, that They will teach that God's name appears, that is Jehovah to them, in the Hebrew scriptures 5 times. And they'll show you that. One being in Psalms 83:18, I believe it is, where it has the name Jehovah there. But understand, that's a translation. What appears there is a 4-letter Hebrew word, YHWH, JHWH. The Hebrew language isn't written with vowels, only consonants. So the translator and the reader had to insert their own vowels in the Hebrew alphabet to come up with a name. So if one saw the letters translated JHWH or YHWH, one could put in there an A in between the Y and the H. They could put in the E or any of the vowels. But does that give us God's name? No, it doesn't give us God's name. And if it does, how do we know that which one is the correct one? Which one is the correct pronunciation? That God's name is so holy, that it's so high, that it's so perfect. Why we want to mess that up? And who are we, lowly, imperfect beings, arrogate ourselves to give God a name? It is God who names us. So if Jesus never used a personal name for God, why should I? In fact, in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus did not say, "This is how you shall pray, Jehovah, let your name be sanctified." No, he says, "Our Father." See, he addressed him as Father, but never by a personal name. And that warrants sit-down thought. That warrants investigation. And it also warrants challenge to those who believe that God's name is Jehovah, Yahweh, Jah. I submit to you that we do not know, just as Moses did not know, and the ancient Hebrews and Israelites who were enslaved in Egypt did not know the personal name of God, because God didn't tell Moses. So what can Moses tell them? So when God said to Moses, "You tell them I am who I am sent you," what was God referring to? God was referring to his reputation. Please understand that in the history of what many consider biblical, people named their own gods. They created their own gods and they gave them names. Those gods were lifeless. They had no power. So if one would make a request from those gods to say, bring a dead one back to life, or to do this or to do that, nothing would happen. So those gods had the reputations, that is, name, reputation, of not producing results. But the creator of the heavens and the earth is not of that sort. He has the reputation of, if he utters something, it comes to pass. If he says, "Let there be light," there will be light. If he says that he's going to destroy the world and supplant upon his created earth, his kingdom, that is going to happen. See, he has that reputation, has that good name, again, reputation, that whatever he says he's going to do, he is going to do. I am who I am. Now, there are those who will say, "Well, wait a minute, Ron. Didn't Jesus say there at, I believe it's at John chapter 17, verse 26, where Jesus is in prayer and he's talking to his God and his Father. And if you read from the New World Translation, that's the Bible that Jehovah's Witnesses use, it will read there, "I've made your name known." If you read in other translations, it doesn't say that. It will say something like, it doesn't use the word name. So what was Jesus referring to there? "I made you known to them." Jesus made God's reputation known to them, that he is a God who keeps his promises. He's a God who is just. He's a God who's righteous. And he is a God that one can rely on. And by looking at the one that he sent, that's Christ Jesus, one is looking at really a reflection, a human reflection of his Father. Like Father, like Son. Now I know that the Watchtower uses a scripture to justify using a name, a personal name for God, Jehovah, from Acts chapter 15, verse 14, where I'm paraphrasing here, where Simon has made known to the disciples that God intervened and made his name known, has taken out the people for his name, rather, from the Gentiles. Well, again, that's reputation. That's not referring to a personal name for God, because even Simon himself never used a personal name for God. And I think it's an arrogant thing for us to give God a name, when it should be the other way around, where he names us. So that shows how, in my view, it shows how far removed we are. And I used to be one of those removed ones, where religion, I'm referring to the religious system of Christianity and all of her daughters, the many denominations that is, they're very aggressive in pushing narratives upon the masses that Jesus is God, where Jesus never said he was God. And when you present to those individuals the many powerful utterances of Christ himself, that he is not God, they become offended. You see, what they've done, they fashioned for themselves, like the ancient ones did, their own God. They fashioned for themselves a God, and they gave him a name, Jesus. They even adorned him to look in their image. That is no different from what the pagans did in creating their own gods and giving them names. Jesus is not God. Jesus is the sent one from God. Jesus is from God. He is not God. And I won't go in this video of all the many powerful scriptures, utterances of Christ, from Christ himself, to show that he is not God, but he is simply the Son of God and the one that God sent, that he's from God. And I've written articles about this, and I believe I produced a few videos that address this as well. That one says something is so, that a very powerful religious system says something is so, doesn't make it so, doesn't make it the truth. And that's one thing is definitely in error. Jesus is not God. He is the Son of God. And it's insulting to the one who is. The one who is. There's only one God. And that one God is nameless to us. His name is so holy. Now, one day, in the very, very distant future, when the end comes, and God has established his kingdom upon this earth, an everlasting kingdom, then we will know his most holy and perfect name. Even Jesus said this. If Jesus never, ever uttered a personal name, used or uttered a personal name for God, and neither did his apostles and neither did his disciples, why are we doing it? And why is Christianity, and that includes the Watchtower too, Watchtower, many people think that Jehovah's Witnesses don't consider themselves Christians. They do. They consider themselves Christians. They consider themselves true Christians, but nonetheless, they consider themselves Christians. So, but why is Christianity teaching something contrary to what Jesus did? And why are they, I'm not saying just the Watchtower, all of it, all of them, why are they justifying the need to give God a name when God has not made his name known to us? And one would think that Jesus would have told us specifically that this is God's name. That will be seated throughout the Greek scriptures or the New Testament. It simply is not there. The key here is what Jesus taught us at Matthew chapter 6, beginning at verse 9, what many of you know as the Lord's Prayer. That we keep God's name holy, that we maintain it as such, that we maintain his name as holy. And you know what that does? That humbles us. Not using a personal name for God or making one up doesn't make us less of his worshipers. In fact, it shows humility and it shows respect that we don't put them down to our level. We have names. Well, let's give God a name too. No, don't you dare. Let us not give God a name. Let God in his own time reveal to us his name. If God wanted us to know his name, he would have told Moses. And we would hear all the other prophets and other individuals we read about in this book called the Bible use a personal name for God. It's not there. And above all of that, the one that he sent, the one that he told us there at Luke chapter 9, verse 35 to listen to, that is his son would have told us such. And Jesus never told us a personal name for God. So this is for your consideration, and I'll end it here. And until the next video, this is Earl Jerome Harris. You guys have a great day.